it may be that there is a turning point right now with Israel and Gaza, and maybe even Israel as a whole. Um, there's a story about a man. This just actually happened in Florida, and I think it was in Florida. He was crossing a pond. He was swimming in the pond, and he got attacked by an alligator. And the alligator bit him, and he was fighting for his life with the alligator, and he was wrestling with the alligator in the pond, and he was swimming to try and to shore to try and save his life. And he reached shore, and he got up on shore into these people's backyard, and he saw these gardening shears for trimming, and he grabbed them like a weapon. And he was completely crazed, and he went into the house, and then the people called the police, and then when the police came, the man had the shears, and he dropped the shears, and he saw the rifle in the police car, the shotgun, and he ran into the police car to grab the shotgun, and they warned him, and he grabbed the shotgun, and they warned him to put it down, and he wouldn't do it, and they tasered him, and nothing stopped him, and then they ended up shooting him and killing him. um, it's been about a year and a half since October 9th, I think, in Gaza. And a lot has happened and changed since then. And I think a lot of people, you know, really, truly, and me also, didn't know and don't know how horrible what was done that happened in Gaza. It was done by Hamas, and even to some extent the people of Gaza themselves and their reaction. It was inhumane, um, and the response of Israel was very justified to go in and do a lot of the things they've done. But it might be that at this point, a year and a half later, there's this rotation or this changing. And with self-defense, for example, and even beyond self-defense, spiritually, there are these principles of motivation and reasonableness. And we're judged by our motivation. And when our motivation shifts from self-protection to something else that's more menacing, then it's not right. And when the reasonableness of what we're doing in self-protection exceeds the level that is right, then unrighteousness results. Something that begins as righteous can become unrighteous. And yesterday in the old city was there. Well, in all of Israel, it was Flag Day, and there was planned this big um, event, and people went up to Temple Mount, and but a lot of young Jewish people went through the old city, specifically through Damascus Gate, and walked down the street, this very central street, and they walked through the old city, and they were very confrontational toward Arab people there, and they were apparently doing a lot of things. They were saying Prophet Muhammad was dead. They were saying death to Arabs and all sorts of things. They're spitting on people for no reason, with no provocation, and it was just a really ugly scene. And it was very hard for anyone who is supportive of Israel to look at that and say that that's the people of God, that that's in any way right, or that God had um, not just chosen them, but chosen them to do that to other people. And so these two things, and then there was this bombing of a hospital at the same time in Gaza. And, in the last 2 months or so, the humanitarian situation in Gaza has just gotten more extreme. And there are children who are starving. Um, and they're becoming like they actually look like Holocaust survivors who their bones are showing, and they're emaciated, and it's beyond normal hunger. And the Hamas has used hospitals and schools, and but there's this mix of things going on. And Israel targeted a hospital. It's not clear if they missed the hospital and hit a school. or they're intending to hit the school and they hit the hospital. It's not all that's not totally clear, but anyway, there are a lot of people in the hospital, and there's this one little girl, this very famous picture now of her walking in front of the flames and trying to get to shelter. And they interviewed her, and she said basically this bomb fell and this fire erupted, and then her mom was dead and her dad was there, and she was just looking, and all of her family except for her mom and her dad and brother died. And there there's just this question about motivation first and then reasonableness. And it's very possible that the motivation has turned from self-protection among a lot of people, not necessarily the majority, but a substantial enough number that they are influencing what's going on and maybe even defining some of what's going on. It's turned from self-protection to hate. And then that's different. Also, the reasonableness at this point, no one knows for sure, but the ability of Hamas to even function, all the leadership is gone. It's not even the same, a lot of the same people. Maybe some small cells and groups are hanging on and they still have these hostages, which is a real issue. But in terms of being a real threat to Israel, Hamas is, they're almost like they're not like an animal attacking at the door. They're more like a bug or something like that. Um, and there's very little actual threat. The people are weakened. They're crazed with grief and suffering. Maybe the people should stop Hamas. Maybe they should have stopped Hamas earlier. But at this point, it's almost beyond asking them to think rationally because they're suffering so much. And they're certainly not planning, attacks on Israel, and they have no weapons left hardly, and anything, it's no longer there. And so this is an example sometimes of when something that begins righteous goes too far and it is no longer righteous. Another recent example of this that maybe is coincident with this is Iran, and a major shift in U.S. and Israeli relations happened in the last month or so. And it looked like Israel and the U.S. would be very close, and Trump and Netanyahu were in the White House, and they were taking these steps, and it looked like there was this, consolidation. It was very significant. But then I think Israel also went too far, and the National Security Advisor is a very key person, Mike Waltz. He is a very strong Israel supporter and hawk, and he was conspiring with Netanyahu in a hidden back channel signal chat to how to manipulate the United States to bomb Iran. And Netanyahu and Mike Waltz were talking on this signal chat, and it was found out, and so Trump fired Mike Waltz, and then he's basically broken off relations with Netanyahu. He's not talking to him. And for the United States president to not be talking to the prime minister of Israel, that's a very significant thing. And so then Trump goes to the Arab nations, and all these kinds of things are going on. And it's not really clear where the relationship with the United States and Israel is right now. And it's really Israel's fault, because they had everything. They had the United States willing to cooperate with them and turn Gaza into this new resort, and to reset. They were just going to do all these things together, but Israel pushed too hard, went too far, and overplayed, and then now they're on the outs. And with what's happening in Gaza, this whole international opinion is shifting. Even very reasonable people supporting Israel, it's shifting now. And a lot of countries are about to recognize Palestine as an independent country, which will cause a lot of problems because Israel will then possibly fully annex the West Bank, and that's their only response in return. and that's not going to be necessarily a good thing. But this Iran issue is really the same issue of where some people in Israel believe it's a threat to our existence, and so we have got to bomb Iran and we've got to take out all of their nuclear capability. When in fact it may be that the approach that Trump was taking was right, and it's better to negotiate with Iran. It's better to accept some level of risk, but influence them commercially rather than through bombs. And that policy of bombing in the Middle East is in Syria and Lebanon and in Iraq has been a disaster, and Afghanistan has been a disaster for 30 years. And so maybe that approach by Trump is right, and maybe instead of bombing Iran, there should be this discussion with Iran and to give them commercial reasons not to act irrationally. And so some people, though, in Israel are just convinced that Iran has to be destroyed. And, no one knows, like in a certain number of years, things could happen and Iran could get a bomb, and the Mahdi, or the Antichrist Messiah figure, could, not the Antichrist, but a Messiah figure could rise up, and who knows, lots of things could happen. But right now, it's not seeming it's like that. And those things can't be stopped anyway. But it might be that Israel is like that man with the alligator, and whereas they had fought for their survival and they had gone through the pond or the swamp and they had the alligator attack them and they had to fight to live and to battle for their existence, that mindset has created in them this fear or panic, so that now they run into the yard and pick up the gardening shears and they're going into the house, and then now they see the police car and they're running toward the shotgun in the police car. And it's because of this thought that they are in this circumstance and they had to fight for their survival, and they're almost crazed with that idea. And that is a very national truth in Israel, this recollection of the Holocaust. And it is a fact of the nature of things, is that evil hates Israel and it seeks to destroy it, as with the Nazis. But even within that larger truth, there are situations where the survival panic mode can actually work counterproductively and cause Israel to endanger itself by taking such extreme actions that it becomes like the man who goes for the shotgun in the police car and ends up getting tasered and then shot and killed. So it's once it's hard to take a break and hard to reset and hard to think sometimes. And these are human dynamics and some of these skills. Why is it important to try to understand the situation? One is because it's very instructive about how to see the end times and the complexity of the end times, and also because it's in the heart of God. It's the center of the heart of God, this longing and this love and this promise and this faithfulness to Israel. And so if you consider these things and then read Romans 9 and 10 and 11, it's an insight into the nature of the mystery of God and to the types of unexplainable things and unknowable things that we will grapple with in the end times. And so now is a very important time to pay attention to these things and to try and develop our understanding of them, so that as things happen that are beyond our expectations and beyond our experiences, we won't be disoriented. And there's also this other thing that I saw yesterday with this almost gymnasium full of people, or a large hall, and then these young Israeli kids, and they were just singing with such passion and worshiping God, and just the thought of that. And there's, on one hand, you have in Romans 9, which says Israel will be saved, but not all Israel are those who are of Israel. And then he talks about Esau and Jacob, and then also Isaac, and then the implication is also Ishmael. And so there's this there's this complexity to that, but it ends up with the core point being this faithfulness of God and the beauty of the salvation of Israel. And so in some ways, ways the way that God has dealt with Israel and the things that have happened with Israel, they also can help us better understand what will happen and what to expect and the types of things that we might be thinking through and trying to understand and to go through in order to get to the right side and to be faithful to God and close to Him and with Him and on the other end of the shore. And so, amen. God bless you.